Hello, everybody, and welcome to the podcast, the second podcast in our special series of looking at the top 20 songs, well, not really the top 20, but 20 songs that are particularly memorable and inspired us in video games. If you've listened in last week, you would have heard the first 10, and now we're going to jump into the second 10. But first, we'll go to some Hatsune Miku music because that always puts everyone in a good mood. After that, we will jump straight into the countdown.
My next pick is the Midnight Carnival from Guilty Gear X2, which this is the music that plays during the final boss. And I think Harvard, in a separate discussion, described it better than I ever could. So I'm just going to quote from him, where he said that I have a soft spot for boss tracks that spend 40 seconds in "you're going to die" mode before switching up to "if you're still alive and listening to this, we're now cheering for you," which that is, I think, just the perfect description of a track that starts off in a very sort of solemn and melancholy kind of tense sort of way, and then gradually ramps up into something much more energetic.
So my pick is from Xenoblade Chronicles 2. And if you guys know Monolith Soft, they are really, really well known for good soundtracks. I feel like the soundtrack of Xenoblade Chronicles 2 can stand up next to the real greats like Kingdom Hearts or even something like the Studio Ghibli soundtrack. And the track that I've chosen is from the Lefteria continent, and it's the night theme. It occurs about 20 to 25 hours into the game, and it's the main character's hometown. So when you're walking through this area at night, it's this huge, cloudy area, and you're standing on these giant, like mini continents, and you're walking across these really precarious bridges over just an ocean of clouds, and you feel the adventure and the nostalgia of going back to your hometown in this track. I think it's very emotional and very beautiful. Please enjoy.
So Alan's second pick, unfortunately he can't be here to talk about it, but his second pick is a particularly good song. It's the France theme from Civilization 6. Now, if you play Civilization 6, you'd know that each nationality, each civilization has its own theme song, and it's based on that culture in the real world. So it uses influences and themes from, in this case, the French culture. Everything that you think about when you think about the French, you would hear through this song. And it really does set the tone. So each time you play Civilization 6 with a different faction, you have that different sense of culture that's conveyed through the music. So this is a really lovely song, and people never think about soundtracks when they think about strategy games, but Civilization is a particularly good example of how music can really enhance the feeling of what you're playing as you play.
So Brad's second pick is a track from Link's Awakening, and if you're familiar with the Zelda series, you might know some of this tune. It's an interpretation of the main overworld theme from the original Zelda game, and it's called Taotao Heights. It occurs about halfway through the game. You've been through a few dungeons, and this is where you really start to feel your adventure is coming together. You're starting to learn a bit more about the world, and I think hearing the main Zelda theme at this point, it really catches you and drives you forward. And an interesting thing too is that not everyone's into chiptunes, but you really need to appreciate just how rich and complex they got this melody using the three vocal channels that are only available on the Game Boy.
If you're a regular listener to the podcast, then you would know I have an obsession with Good King Mog from Final Fantasy XIV. This is the theme song that plays while you fight the Mog boss, which is, I can't remember if it was actually part of the main storyline or just a kind of a bonus boss that was thrown in almost as a joke. It's a very funny battle. It's a very funny character that you're fighting. And the music really fits with that. It's a very Danny Elfman style theme, and it's designed to have that, evoke that sense of Halloween, which is, I guess, what the Good King Mog battle itself is about. It's silly, it's charming, it's ridiculously catchy. And when I was playing Final Fantasy XIV, I found myself going back to fight the Good King Mog boss battle over and over again, in no small part because I just couldn't get enough of this song. So thanks a lot for absorbing a lot of my time, Final Fantasy XIV, and particularly with this song.
And my pick for a song that stands out, perhaps predictably, this is not a Final Fantasy one, so I didn't lie to you guys. It's Cass's theme from Breath of the Wild. So I don't know if you hate accordion, or if you hate any sort of like folk sounding instrument, don't listen to the songs, don't do it. But Cass's theme is so iconic, like, and for me, it really sort of evokes a very particular time and place when I was playing Breath of the Wild, like just coming in from the night and just hearing the strains of his music and just having to like hunt around for him, or like being near a stable and just hearing it and being confident and knowing that Cass is there. I feel like they did such a good job in tying a specific musical motif to a particular series of tasks in the game. And obviously Breath of the Wild was an amazing game, narrative design wise. And so things like these small callbacks and how Cass is actually a really crucial character and set up to be really sympathetic. I don't know. I just feel like the theme itself, a song, it fits him. Like the instrument that makes the bulk of the music here, incredibly portable. The kind of thing a folk hero would carry around. Like if Cass were a D&D character, like that would be consistent with his lore. Like it's just such a soothing, melodic track that has just the right hit of bittersweetness, which I think is perfect for the way Breath of the Wild story pans out. Like it's a song that can sound both bitter and hopeful at once, which I think is really impressive. And it always conjures up a very calm, melancholy air. So I highly recommend it. It's one of my favorite songs ever.
My next pick is also from Breath of the Wild, and it's the Terrytown theme. Terrytown is a side quest which you basically get the lumberjack people to build, and over the course of the game, it slowly grows and becomes a more lively community. And like the community which grows, the music throughout the side quest also grows. So, for example, when you first get into Terrytown, it's a quiet, very simple track. It's got a little theme, but it's not really overly complicated musically. And then when you recruit a Goron to come to Terrytown, suddenly there's some trumpets which are used in the Goron city. And then as you do the same side quest, you get other people, and those people bring in their sort of communities, bits and pieces from the music tracks in there. Sort of like the Kaz theme, how it uses bits of the location he is in. The Terrytown slowly grows with parts of, say, Boruto Village. There's a bits of the track and how the theme is used when the character from that village is in Terrytown. So Terrytown is a piece which grows as the game grows, and it's a very interestingly laid out, musically complicated piece by the end of the whole side quest. So I hope you enjoy it.
My next pick, and I think probably definitely one of my favorite pieces of game music of all time, is Advanced Wind from Wild Arms 3, which anyone who knows me or has heard me talking about it knows that Wild Arms 3 is one of my favorite games of all time, and it has a special place in my heart as a game I played a lot as a kid and growing up. And so this piece of music is the opening theme that plays during the cutscene, and the opening cutscene, and every time you load the save, there's a little prologue that plays with this music. It's a sort of, the whole Wild Arms 3 soundtrack is really great and mixes, it's very Western themed, but mixes that with like a bit of sort of pop and techno influences. And I think Advanced Wind really encapsulates all that and is a great introduction to the main character as well, who is beginning the game by setting off on an adventure into the wilderness, partially in search of her missing father and partially to just find her place in the world, really. And I think just the tone of the music and the lyrics really captures that and sets the game off well.
A change in time finally made up my mind. I raise my hand from beneath the shifting sand and embrace the winds of change. Suddenly, everything is up to me. The pages turn, flashing full of memories. I can see it all too clear. The time has come to face my fear. And there's a fire burning in my heart to shine when all is torn apart. And I will make it through this desert storm, safe and warm. My shield is strong. I'll take my chances here now. Bring on the fight. I'll find a way to win somehow. No tomorrows, no regrets. I'll risk it all for this brand new day.
So my third pick is an ending theme from a Pokemon game, and hot take this. I think this is probably the worst generation. It's from Pokemon Diamond and Pearl, which is Generation 4. But the ending theme really captures the feeling of going on a big journey and then coming back to your hometown at the end. And it starts with this really nice, nostalgic, melancholic theme, and then it just builds into something which encapsulates the feeling of going all around the world and seeing all these different sides the game has to offer. And if you've played through a Pokemon game and listened through this theme, I'm sure that you will get the feeling of going on that adventure too.
So I'm doing one of Alan's picks, which is the Sunset Waltz from Final Fantasy 15. So you already know I love me a good waltz, but this is a 180 temperamentally from what Ravana's waltz was like. So this is the music that plays in the open world where you're just kind of running around and doing things. So you may or may not recognize it. I know when I first heard this pick, I was like, where have I heard this before? I knew it's familiar, but I couldn't pin a location down. Turns out it's all the locations. It's playing all the time. And I think it's a really good example of music that is inobtrusive, but also still very striking because I knew I heard it somewhere. I just couldn't pinpoint where exactly. And I think Final Fantasy as a series, you already know, I'm biased. The orchestral work is amazing, and this is no different. The Sunset Waltz has a very sort of like calming, almost somber tone to it, which I think kind of deals with the whole, or perfectly encapsulates the way that the narrative of Final Fantasy 15 goes. It's also got a very slow, deliberate pacing that's almost over dramatic, which again I think feels very symbolic of the overall narrative for Final Fantasy 15. So I think it kind of captures the game's energy in a very kinetic way. Obviously, a waltz has a lot of momentum. So to have it as a world music is a smart choice because you always feel like you're pressing on and moving and going somewhere. It's a very dynamic piece despite the speed. So I enjoy it. I think it's a really beautiful song, and I hope you guys check it out. Have a listen.
We ended up with 21 when we counted all of our entries. So this last one comes to us from Brad, and it's the aquatic ambience theme from Donkey Kong Country. So Donkey Kong Country, obviously Super NES game, very well known, platformer, so on and so forth. One of the reasons it is so well known is because of its music, particularly striking music, especially given the relative limitations of the Super NES in terms of hardware. And aquatic ambience is a really good example of how you can set a scene through music because these, as the name suggests, this music plays in the underwater levels, and those underwater levels really became striking, elegant, and beautiful levels to explore, in part because this music so effectively set the scene of an aquatic wonderland that you're exploring through. So it's a great piece of music. Donkey Kong Country is full of great music, but this one is a particular standout. Enjoy it. And after that, that's the end of the podcast for the week. So thanks very much for tuning in. I hope you've enjoyed the top 20 countdown that we've done. It has been a little bit of a filler because I'm not around, but I think it's an interesting one. Game music is something that we all love at DDNet, and we figured that it was a good excuse to really go in depth and just focus on the music in the games that we love. So thanks very much for tuning in. We will be back as soon as possible. Might not be next week, might not be a week after, but as soon as we're back on board, we will be back to our regular programming. Thanks very much.